Over the past few years, our community has seen its share of weather-related incidents that remind us that we all need to be prepared for an emergency-type situation. Hi, I'm Maureen Hodgson, and this is Let's Talk Centerville. Tonight, we're going to review what you need to have in an emergency kit, how you should be prepared, and the steps that you should take in an emergency situation. And here to tell us more from the Washington Township Fire Department, we have Fire Marshal Mike Long, and from the Centerville Police Department, we have Sergeant James Myers. And thank you both for being here.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
And when we talk about an emergency situation, especially today, with so much going on nationally, with wildfires and floods and hurricanes, it's really important to understand that probably in our situation here in Centerville, Ohio, when we talk about an emergency, it is going to be weather related, right?
Most of the time, yes.
So
yes.
That's the kind of thing that we're going to really
yes.
focus on is kind of...
We can do that.
Yeah, the weather and what you should have. And I know we've talked about this. We talk about this every year because September is National Preparedness Month. But really, it's important to remind people that these are things that you do need to be doing and do be mindful of.
Well, absolutely. I mean, weather disasters can strike at any time. It really doesn't matter, even absent in the winter. There's still a possibility of tornadoes, but throughout the rest of the year, a weather disaster could strike at any moment.
And being prepared is so important. And this year, the Ready.gov's theme is to don't wait, communicate, make your plan today. And we really want to focus on how important it is to make sure that you have a communications plan. And by the way, you can always go to Ready.gov or to the Centerville website, which is centervilleohio.gov, and you can download a lot of information about what to have in your emergency kit, how to be prepared, just so that you are ready, as you said, Jamie, in any type of situation, because you never know when some type of weather situation might happen. And before we talk about some things, we're going to show you a PSA from FEMA that will really show you how important it is to make sure that you have that plan. We'll take a look.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
You know, we look at that and it looks very scary, but those are things that actually can happen and are happening across the country.
We have had a lot of rain this year. We've had a lot of problems. We've had a lot of lines down, power lines down, wind shear. We've had roofs taken off of homes and businesses, and yes, it most certainly can happen around here, and being ready is definitely a key part of what we're here for today. So,
well, and let's talk about this plan. So this is for your family and the things that you should do, and it's not just for a huge disaster, but it could be something as simple as a power outage.
right, correct.
Or something that happens. So you definitely want to communicate with others. And what are some good ways that we can do that? Is really like even if you have a meeting place, right?
Have a meeting place. Know your surroundings around your home. Know where a tree, fire hydrant, whatever the case may be, have a plan together, be in one place so when we do show up, if we get called, everybody is there, everybody's safe, we know everybody is out of the house and or safe inside the house, shelter in place or evacuate depending on what the particular emergency is.
So is it a good idea to have a spot like your mailbox or maybe a place?
Big tree, mailbox, fence line, flower garden, you know, anything that everybody agrees to and knows where to go. That is correct.
And you can't, Jamie, expect that everyone's going to be in your home during a disaster, right?
No, absolutely not. And more so in particular, especially if you have young children that are in school. If a natural disaster or emergency strikes during that period of time and say the parents are at work and the children are at school, you should also communicate with them as to where they need to go. If their, a central meeting place isn't possible, maybe designate a friend or a relative or something like that where the children know that they can go or reach out to.
And the fire department and the police department work with the schools so that the schools have a disaster plan, and they have an evacuation plan as well. So as a parent, you should have received that from the school, or make sure that you get that so that you know where the alternate location might be if they evacuate, right?
Absolutely.
And then cell phones are so important. But the interesting thing is, do you know everybody's cell phone number? Probably not. We put them in our phones, and that's something that you really need to know, or have it backed up, or make sure that your cell phone provider or your carrier has a backup system.
Right, there are going to be a lot of phone calls going on. If there is an emergency going on, you might have to wait a minute to get to get that connection. But having your cell phone, as you're talking about the different ways to communicate, get the word out there. And cell phones are an amazing thing. They certainly are. But hopefully everybody has one. And the Twitter accounts and
social media is one of the fastest ways that currently we see to get information to a wide audience. I know there's been numerous accounts of Twitter and Facebook where something has happened, and within a matter of minutes, thousands of people have been notified of a disaster or an emergency. And also, like Mike was saying with the cell phones, it's probably a better idea to text as opposed to trying to call.
Correct.
That text data seems to go through better and push through better than actual phone calls, because the lines usually are all tied up.
And you need to make sure that you all have numbers. And so again, storing those numbers is very important as well. And then if you don't have a way of communicating by phone, I guess the social media, knowing that if it's a certain location that's being evacuated, that you know where that's going, so you need to make connection with somebody so that you know what's happening. And we also want to remind people that if you have an elderly neighbor or someone in need, you want to check on that person as well, because I want to say the last 2, maybe last 3 winters have been extremely harsh, where we've had days upon days upon days of snow and ice.
And we're scheduled to have another one this year. So
we are?
We are. Another bad.
Well, thanks for the good news, Mike.
Sorry. Better be prepared. That's one of the reasons why we're here, to talk about what they need in case we do lose power, or they get stuck in the snow for a period of time, what to have in your vehicle, and how to stay warm, and be prepared for that too.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk about that. So if you are getting ready, because October is here, and we've had snow as early as mid to late October before. So
40 degrees at the middle of September, anything can happen, and be prepared, because we know that it's supposed to come. So.
Well, what should you have in your car? What would be a good idea to have in your car right now?
Some of the things that most people overlook, particularly with winter driving, is something as simple as an emergency shovel. A blanket is always a must. To keep some cones or some flares in your vehicle in case you get stranded out there. Jumper cables, things that would assist you in the need of a roadside emergency. But the blanket is pretty key.
Blanket, clothing,
and the
jacket,
shovel.
Those are things you can keep year-round in your car.
Absolutely.
It should not be a hassle to have. So that way you're always prepared as far as your car goes.
Right. And just as we discussed about preparing an emergency kit for your home, you can do the same thing for your vehicle. And they do sell those commercially as well.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that you have that. And as we said, the snow could be flying very soon. But it could be something as a windstorm also, because we had that issue back in, was it Ike that came through in September.
Nice sunny day, and 5 days later we were trying to get our power back. So
9 days in my case.
Your case, ours was 5, and who expected that? And they do. They come from nowhere, and the next thing you know, you're without power, and it isn't just going to be Centerville and Washington Township. If there is a disaster, it could be countywide. It could be statewide. You might not get help as quick as you think that you're going to get help. So the service companies out there, it might take a while to get to our neck of the woods to get things taken care of, get back online.
Which, as we said, we all lived through several years ago, and that's why it's important that when you look at a disaster, you're ready for what you might need. And so here's another good PSA, again from FEMA, to give you a reminder of what you should have in an emergency kit.
If your electrical power should be disrupted, do you have a plan to keep your family as comfortable and safe as possible? Every day we turn on lights, prepare meals, use our computers without really thinking about the electricity that we use. Events like severe storms can cause outages lasting hours or days, and the power could go out for miles around you. During widespread outages, you may have difficulty finding a working ATM machine or getting fuel for your vehicle. Traffic problems may result from signals not working, and no power can mean no air conditioning or heating. The effects of a long power outage can really take its toll, so make sure you're prepared. Include a battery-powered radio in your emergency kit, along with food and water for each member of your family, including pets, to last at least 3 days. You need at least one flashlight, not candles because of a fire hazard, and consider using a headband light so you're able to move around freely. Remember to have activities for children to pass the time, like books and board games and puzzles. And try to keep your cell phones fully charged, so in an emergency, you can send text messages. No matter the time of year, we all need to be ready for power outages. Don't be caught in the dark. Find out more at ready.gov/blackouts.
And that actually looks like something that could happen in our community.
Very easily, very easily.
So we're going to go through some of these items, and again, you saw it in the clip there where it's as simple as getting a container, keeping it either in your basement or somewhere in your kitchen, your pantry, someplace that would be easily accessible that you can kind of keep your eye on, but hopefully those items won't need to be used, but just in case. So let's talk about probably the most important thing, which is water.
Water.
And you should have 1 gallon of water per day per person for at least 3 days.
Correct.
Do we typically need to plan for 3 days? Is 3 days a
3 days minimum,
good rule of
yes.
thumb?
That's your rule of thumb, 3 days minimum.
Because as we were saying, you were out for what, 9 days?
9 days,
9
and
days and 5 for me.
I would tell you that if you have the storage space available, 3 days is not enough. I would go at least 5 to 7 if possible. If you have that room to store the extra materials, I would say to err on the safe side and go with more instead of
Without a
less.
doubt.
And as we go through these items, it's probably a good time now to talk about, should you stay in your home? When do you decide, should you shelter in place or should you seek shelter elsewhere?
I would say the best course of action if the emergency is imminent is to shelter in place and not try to evacuate. A lot of times, particularly if it's a storm or something like that, trying to get out that quickly, you end up getting caught in the storm as opposed to in a place of safety. Certain things like hurricanes, there's advance notice and things like that. Typically, in those scenarios, you have more time to evacuate, but typically in this area, I would tell you things happen pretty quickly, so you're probably better off sheltering in place.
Okay. And then you want to make sure that you have, we're saying at least 3 days supply of food. You're thinking maybe even 5 to 7 days just in case. Of course, if it's canned food, it's not going to go bad, so you might as well keep it. But if you have canned food, you need to make sure.
Yep, you change it out. Keep an eye on your expiration dates. They all have them. Even toothpaste and water have expiration dates. So.
And that you have either a can opener or you're using pop tops,
Right.
because it's not going to be very helpful if you can't get that can open.
That's right. Have the tools available.
And then cell phone and chargers. And this is something that we see over and over again. And I remember, again, going back to Ike, we had people coming by the city building. I think they were going to the police department just to charge their phones because they didn't have electricity. It's a very serious thing.
We survive on power equipment nowadays. Everything's battery operated, or you've got to have chargers. So you've got to have a way to do it. We talk about generators during the Ike issue. We had a lot of generators going. People that did have generators back then were running extension cords to other homes to help, as you said, the neighbors. You want to be prepared. And now generators are back available, and we certainly recommend them. Just make sure you follow some safety rules when you come to generators as well.
And also the weather radios. I know you're a big fan.
The weather radios, we had a wind-up one during Ike, and it was great. I didn't have to worry about batteries. It just winded up, and it really did give us a lot of information over the 2, 3, 4 days that we were without power. The other thing I had was a propane grill with the side burner, so I could continue to cook, and we never lost really. It was actually kind of nice. So.
I think a lot of people did enjoy that. I mean, they made the best of it. Centerville really made the best of that situation.
Right. I mean,
our residents were great about that.
It worked out well, and it was calm. Everybody was peaceful, and I think it all worked out. It just it's an eye opener.
Right, but it was also warm weather. It was very warm during that time.
Yes.
If this is going to happen during the winter, we have a completely
another
different
scenario.
situation. Right. And we should remind people that if in case it were to get extremely cold or very hot, we have the Washington Township Rec Center that we open as a cooling center.
Right.
And we also have the city building, we have the police department, the libraries are open. So we'll always make sure that we get information to you, but if you ever have a question, you can always call the city 433-7151 about emergency situations like that. Another thing you have to think about is your medication. If you have medication, you need to make sure that you have an additional supply on hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Medication's important, and know where it's at, and always keep updated as much as you can. I know that sometimes it's hard to get a vast amount of medication available, but having it available, ready, and keeping it in a safe place. If you have a list of medications in case you get separated, whatever, put a list of medications on the refrigerator or in the refrigerator, so if we need to go in and get that list, it's available to us.
And that could be any time, really. If you're on a call for an emergency and you have to go with the EMS,
Right.
you should have your medication posted so that you all can find it. Is that where you typically go, right to the refrigerator?
Basically, yes. Or they'll tell us where, and if they can't tell us, and we look at the refrigerator and see if it's anywhere in the kitchen is where it usually is, but most of the time it's posted on the refrigerator. And make that list available to take with us, so that way we have all the medication we can give to the hospital once we transport the patient to the hospital. So.
Because you never know if someone's going to be
That's
unconscious or if something like that is going to happen. Obviously, you might want to make sure that you have garbage bags and just personal items that you need to take care of. And as we saw in the clip too, if you've got children, you want to make sure you have activities because they're going to get bored very quickly.
Very quickly.
And so you want to make sure you have something for them. And then when you think about special needs, if you have an elderly person or if you have items that they might need, pets, don't forget your pet.
Oxygen, if you have home oxygen, make sure you have enough home oxygen or a way to get another, was one of the calls of service we did provide was oxygen support during the Ike. 3-4 days out, they didn't have enough oxygen, so we helped provide that too. So you want to make sure you have anything that you need to help life support during a long-term emergency have available.
So really just take a look at what your daily living supplies
Basically,
are and
whatever
make sure that you
use.
have those.
Right, whatever you use on a
readily
day-to-day
at
basis,
hand.
have it there.
And I do want to also remind our residents that if you need help with snow clearing, if you're an elderly person or disabled and you need someone to help you shovel, because I know we get these calls, we probably had almost 100 residents on our list last year. We do have volunteers and groups that we can provide you with a resource list so that you don't need to get out. Maybe it's a grocery run, but you can give us a call, 433-7151, and ask for that list. Also, if you are interested in volunteering, we are looking for groups, families, church groups, anyone who would like to volunteer those services, please call and be a part of that list because our residents are very appreciative, and as our population is getting older, we're seeing more of a need for something like that as well. Let's talk about being informed, and we talked a little bit, Jamie, about social media, but people need to be aware of what's going on. The weather radios are helpful too, but you really have to be conscious about what's happening in your surroundings.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, situational awareness is very important, regardless if it's during a time of a natural emergency or disaster, or just generally every day in life. Unfortunately, we're in a current state of times where we're subject to terrorist attacks, or whether that be domestic or foreign. And just like the incident in Virginia with the news reporters, just situational awareness is very important. So, trying to stay alert and tuned to both, social media, the news outlets, weather radios, whatever it might be, being informed is important in these times.
And if we have an issue, we will encourage residents to tune their radio to 107.3. That's WCWT, and we'll have information there. And also right here on Channel 5, we'll get information to you. But really, as we were saying, with Twitter and texting, information is going to travel so quickly that you're probably going to hear something maybe before we can even get information out.
That's correct.
Which is sometimes a little bit
Sometimes
scary.
a little scary.
But as we talk about that too, I want to remind people that you touched on a good thing, Jamie. If something looks out of place, if something's unusual in your neighborhood, it doesn't look right, you need to call 911.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we encourage that all the time. The residents of the community are, in essence, our eyes and ears, and we can't be there. We can't be everywhere all the time. So if you see something that looks out of place, it looks strange, it looks unusual, we strongly encourage you to give us a call and let us go out and check it out and see whether or not there's any validity to it, or if it's just something that's just a little unusual.
And you all will determine that. The resident doesn't have to worry about if it feels uncomfortable, they should make the call.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're not bothering the police department. You're not bothering the fire department.
Not at all.
We always have to remind people
Not
of
at
that.
all.
Because that is their job. That is what you
Right.
were there to do. People work all throughout the evening and
Right.
early
They're
morning
there
hours.
24 hours
Yeah.
a day.
Yeah.
Call.
Yeah.
If you think there's something out of place or something that's just not right, call.
Now, if you're driving down the road and see, for instance, a light out or a line down, is that an opportunity? Should you call 911 during that time, or?
Well, not necessarily for if it's a traffic signal,
Yeah.
I would say yes.
That's
If
what
it's
I
a
mean,
street
traffic
lamp
signal,
or
yeah.
something along those lines, you can call the non-emergency number. But by all means, if there's a line down, call,
If there's
because
a
you
power
can't
line
assume
down.
that it's a cable line or a phone line. It can
And
be
don't
any
go-
kind of line.
Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
touch it. Let us make that determination, and
Right.
when we get there, we'll figure it out. If a transformer's smoking or on fire, don't try to go up to it or approach it. Just stay away from it and call the 911 line, and we'll come and take care of it, or at least report it to the proper utility company.
But you should not be calling 911 if you're curious whether the roads are bad, if the roads are too icy. That is not a time to call 911.
No,
Right.
no. And generally, there's not only the news media will put that information out there, but you can go to the Ohio Department of Transportation's website. They update road conditions. They have cameras that you can monitor traffic patterns and things like that. So there's other resources out there available for that.
And then also, when you hear a storm is coming, everybody has to go to grocery store and stock
yeah.
up, because that's just what
That's
has
not
to
the
be.
time to do it, but yes, you're right.
Right,
Everyone
you should be
flocks to the
prepared in
stores.
advance, but if the roads conditions are looking bad, it's not worth taking that risk to get out. That's where
Yeah.
probably we see a lot of accidents happen.
Oh, absolutely.
We do, and pay attention to the weather, the alerts. Try to know what's coming, and whether it be snow or thunderstorms, whatever the case may be prepared for it, because it will happen. It'll happen quick, and waiting until the emergency hits and then going out and trying to find a snow shovel or food or water, and by the time you get to the store, it's all gone. So you definitely want to be prepared.
And you want to pay attention to those warnings too. When you're being told go to the basement or seek shelter,
Right.
that's what you need to be doing.
Weather sirens that you hear outside are specifically made to be heard from the outside,
Okay, I
not
was
the
gonna-
inside.
yeah.
So we had a lot of thunderstorms this year. It seems like Centerville and Washington Township were hit quite hard with the rain, sleet. We had 45, 50 calls in a couple of hours here during the summer on a pop-up storm that come up, and again, people were without power for a couple hours, and just something to be prepared for. You never can tell what's going to happen.
And it never fails that when the sirens go off, we'll get phone calls. I was in my house.
That's right.
I didn't hear the siren, and you're not supposed to hear the siren.
You're not supposed to hear them on the inside of the house. That's what you need a weather radio for, or your TV, or
And you shouldn't go
wind-up
outside to see
radio.
if you can hear
Don't
it,
go
right?
outside, and please don't go outside and try to take photos of the tornado as it comes through. Go to your basement, seek shelter. That's what we want you to do. And if the sirens do go off, go inside and seek shelter. They're going off for a reason. In Centerville, Washington Township, we set the alarms or the sirens off when we know there's imminent danger. So that's not the time to be thinking about a problem. It has happened. Seek shelter.
And you do run tests once a month, right?
Once a month, the first Monday of every month.
So when you hear
at
that,
noon.
yeah, but don't expect that you're going to hear that again inside your home, especially with newer windows. They're designed to keep sound out, so you're not going to hear them. So that's where that radio would really be helpful. Or, as we say, watch any local news, and they'll keep you apprised of what the weather is like as well. Let's talk about how we prepare, because I know police and fire, you're constantly preparing for emergency situations, because you kind of deal with every incident is that way, right?
Well, we treat every incident
Yeah.
as an emergency.
Right.
We never can tell what's going to happen when we arrive on a scene or at a business. When we open up the front door, we don't know what we're going to run into. So we try to prepare for everything, but that doesn't mean even as prepared as we are, we're not totally covered for everything that happens. So,
But if there is a severe emergency and we decide that we're going to open up our incident command center, tell us about that, how that would work.
Well, should we activate the Emergency Operations Center, which is manned jointly between Centerville and Washington Township, basically command level people from the city and the township and also the fire department, police department would come together as a team to decide how to best respond to that emergency, whether it be logistics, allocation of resources, what the response is particularly going to be. It's pretty important. There's a national platform for emergency preparedness training and the response, National Incident Management System or Incident Command System. I know all the police supervisors and the fire supervisors have all been to these classes, so that should one of these disasters arise, that we can all be on the same page and communicate and speak the same language, if you will. And depending on the type of emergency that it is, it decides whether it's a fire command or a police command that will take control of that situation. More often than not, it's usually fire. But needless to say, it's important because we do receive the same training that we can all be on the same page should the need arise.
And you work together very well. And
We
have
train
visual
once a
aid as
year.
well, right?
We have Americana once a year. That's all part of the
Yeah.
incident command system. You know, we meet a couple of days before and figure it all out, and so we're pretty well adept to anything that is going to happen, at least to a scale that we can handle here in Centerville and Washington Township. So.
And let's explain to our residents too, when you call 911, you're going to get a lot of apparatus at your house. You're going to get the police probably first,
Yes.
because you're usually out and
Correct.
about, and then probably a
And
fire
then
truck.
followed by a fire truck and a medic. If it's an EMS call, you'll get a minimum of a medic and an engine. If it's a serious call, we'll add the battalion to the call, and then, of course, even if you call in for a chimney fire or something along that line, you might get 2 or 3 pieces of fire apparatus, or you might get a whole bunch depending on how it's particularly called in. If it's a structure call, we're going to send just about everything we have because we're going to need the resources.
And sometimes, as the caller, you might think, well, it's somebody fell, but maybe the person fell because there was a heart attack or something.
Right.
So that's why you have to have all that equipment
Correct.
on hand. So don't let that bother you. I hear that from people say, oh, I didn't want to have
Oh,
all
yeah.
that stuff out. And why do they have to have the sirens? And
Why do you have to come on an ER? Because we're going to be, first of all, it's a law. So
It is the law to have.
It is the law. We have to, if we're going on an emergency, we have to have lights and sirens going. So people have to remember that. We don't get a choice. If not, we go non-ER and we respond. We don't go through traffic lights. We respond. We take our time just like any other person. So that's why we want to make sure if it's an emergency, we're going to respond on an emergency basis, and you will get us with full force if need be. And again, don't let that deter you from calling 911 if you feel that there's an emergency in your home or business.
Yeah, absolutely. Always call if there's a question. A couple other things I wanted to talk about just in the last couple of minutes, but it is fall. People
Nice.
have leaves falling. Sometimes I like to burn those leaves, or sometimes I like to have bonfires. And you want to talk about
First
that
of
a
all,
little
we
bit?
don't use bonfires because they're not legal in the state of Ohio. So recreational fires are okay if you want to use them. If you have leaves down, branches down, you can't burn them. You have to put them either in your trash bags, the paper bags, and put them out for recycling, or tie them up and put them out to the street. But you can't burn them. Recreational fires are really the only thing allowed in Centerville, Washington Township, which is a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot fire away from combustible structures. And technically you're supposed to be cooking over it, but as long as you have a fire extinguisher or a water hose close by, then it's certainly legal. But bonfires are not legal. We only have 2 that in the area, so that are permitted.
So just don't burn it.
Just don't burn it.
Just don't burn
yes,
it.
That's right, and that's throughout the state of Ohio, not just Washington Township, Centerville. So,
But if you're seeing smoke somewhere, you should call 911.
if you're going to have a recreational fire, feel free to call our dispatch at 433-766 or 433-7644 and let us know you're having a recreational fire.
Okay.
Also, talk nice to your neighbors, because if they complain, we're going to tell you to put it out.
All right, well, thanks for sharing this information. We know we talk about this every year because it's so important. Remember, you want to get a kit, be informed, and make a plan. Make sure that you're talking to your family now. Make sure that you know who's going to call, even if you have a contact. Also, we talk about having someone outside the area that everyone can check in with, so that that person outside the area knows that you're all together. But again, 2 good websites to go to would be ready.gov or centervilleohio.gov, and that way you can make sure that you have your kit together. Any last minute word of advice?
Oh, I have a bunch of
I
them.
know you do.
That's another show.
Well, October is Fire Safety
That's
Month, so
right.
you're going to make sure you check your smoke detectors, right?
That's right. Hear the beep when you sleep. That's
Thank
what
you.
we're doing.
We'll see you next time.